have a challenge for Democrats. Explain what's wrong with this country. Except these words are banned. Names of current and former political figures are also banned. Character arguments attacking somebody's personal beliefs are now banned. Religious identifiers are banned. Subjective opinions that cannot be proven by objective facts are banned.
In the words of Barney Stinson, challenge accepted. What's wrong with the United States is that it lags behind the developed world in several key areas. The US is 27th in social mobility, number 6 in median income. Among OECD countries, it's number 8 in reading and number 11 in science, as well as number 30 in math. In terms of child poverty, it ranks 4th from the bottom. It has the highest number of incarcerated citizens per capita, and it has one of the worst healthcare systems in the developed world, with one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the developed world. So that's what's wrong with this country.
This TikToker made light work out of a challenge that Republicans love to do, but honestly it's incredibly telling that Republicans like to do this challenge because they like to pretend that you can have any reasonable conversation about politics in the United States without discussing racism, sexism, homophobia, all of these very systemic problems that exist within our country and have very much been embedded within the law. I mean, we have to remember the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow has never really been dealt with in the history of the United States of America, and even the marginal attempts that were done at desegregation fundamentally failed to distribute any type of material wealth to Black Americans. This reality, of course, is something that these Republicans simply don't want to acknowledge, which is why they come in saying, oh no, you can't call me racist, and you have to say every explanation of how our system works without saying that it's racist. Because fundamentally, that is demanding that you concede to their position of white supremacy before you even have any type of political discussion, which ultimately we have to recognize that the Democrats today, for the most part, basically participate in this, where they categorically reject acknowledging the racist realities that exist in the United States of America and the structural realities behind that. But to go even further, the reality is that it's quite easy to explain what's wrong with the United States by simply pointing out the fact that because we live in a capitalist system, basic necessities are denied for a profit. I mean, think about it. There is a profit incentive to make sure that there are people who are homeless, there are people who are making low wages, and that there are people that can't afford to put food on their table. This is all to the point where even the idea of free school lunches are being challenged by Republicans around the country. And that's why these Republicans really just don't like acknowledging any of these structural realities of our country. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, these different systems of oppression are something they're very much profiting off of. And I would disagree with this TikToker on one point, because I think the truth of the matter is, we don't need to catch up to these European countries. What we need to do is we need to dismantle the systems of racism, sexism, homophobia internally within the United States, and also make sure that we are dismantling the colonial system of oppression that strips wealth away from countries in the global south and brings it to the United States and the European Union. Those social democratic countries in Europe that might have some extra perks ultimately still rely on that colonial oppression. So it's really important to understand that we definitely have a lot to do in terms of catching up to where the rest of the world is, but also at the same time, we need to make sure that we're doing so in such a way that actually includes everybody around the world and isn't just to the benefit of Americans. But if this person wants even more examples of how the United States is fundamentally falling behind, you can of course look at the fact that the United States is failing to do anything to rein in big tech and the fact that they're using our data to surveil us for the purpose of feeding us ads that are increasingly more manipulative. You could point out to the fact that we've basically failed to invest in any type of infrastructure to the point where bridges and dams shutting down because they're structurally insecure, or even bridges and dams collapsing, are things that are not only not unheard of, but also are going to happen with increasing regularity within the United States of America. Then add on to that the fact that we literally don't have any high-speed rail in the United States. And then you can see that there's a ton of other countries, not just in Europe, but around the world. I mean, Cuba has a better healthcare system than we do. China has way better public transit. Vietnam has had one of the absolute best pandemic responses in the entire world. I mean, seriously, there are so many countries that are doing better than the United States. It's not even funny. The United States is unironically one of the absolute worst. I mean, just look at our prison system, for example. The United States has more prisoners per capita than any other country in the world. In fact, we just have more prisoners than any other country in the world. How you're supposed to understand that without understanding the history of racism and Jim Crow is beyond me, because ultimately the war on drugs was nothing but an attempt to make sure that black voters were not allowed to make it to the voting rolls by slamming them with felony voting laws. It was a very clear and explicitly political move on the part of the Nixon administration to start that up. So yes, it turns out the United States is actually one of the worst countries, if not the worst, when you consider harmful impact on other people around the world, you know, via the bombs that the the United States drops everywhere. So, even if you just take these numbers devoid of any context, it makes the United States look pretty bad. But to make matters worse, when you do include the words that this Republican decided that we should just arbitrarily ban, it turns out that the history of colonialism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, etc. all make all of the problems that the United States is dealing with that much worse. This is Ben Carollo with Rebel Headquarters. You can catch my show Galaxy Brain on the Young Turks Twitch channel every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to stay up to date with my content, you can follow me at Benjamin Carollo on Twitter. And for those of you that might be wondering or have noticed, my pronouns are in fact she, her.